Tyler Winslow stared at the grainy footage like it was a ghost caught mid-scream. His hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling, not from fear exactly, but from something deeper, like he'd cracked open a part of the universe that had been sealed for good reason. It started the moment he found the transmission buried inside an unmarked archive drive recovered from the wreckage of Outpost Elora. That colony, Earth's weakest, most neglected outpost, was supposed to be wiped out. Every report, every survivor testimony, every strategic log agreed on that. But this footage said otherwise. There were no screams, no last stands, just silence. And then a voice, female, soft, barely audible through the static. 7 minutes, that's all it took. And the screen went black. Tyler hadn't told anyone, not yet, because when he slowed the audio and isolated the background frequencies, someone else whispered something. A name. His name. But no one else was in the room when it was recorded. The last official report claimed Elora was unarmed, inhabited by no more than 600 civilians, mostly scientists, engineers, and children. No planetary defense system, no off-world weapons grid. It was the kind of place you moved to when you didn't want to be found. The kind of colony used as a footnote in military doctrine. Yet a Krathan war fleet, the same species that vaporized Luna Base Alpha in under 30 seconds, attacked Elora, and didn't just lose, they ceased to exist. Entire capital ships vanished from fleet registries, and the Krathans now refer to Elora in religious terms, calling it the void that remembers. But the Federation sealed every file and erased every trace, which would have worked, if not. For Tyler's insomnia, a forgotten drive and a name whispered in a dead woman's voice, it wasn't just the data that scared him. It was what came next. After watching the footage, he started to dream of a child he never had. A little girl named Sarah who knew things he didn't understand. In one dream, she touched a photo of Elora's skyline and said, "That's where Mommy burned the sky." He told no one. Then this morning, Tyler's neighbor, an old man who once served as a Marine on Saturn's ice moons, stopped him in the hallway and asked, "Did she talk to you yet?" Tyler hadn't spoken to the man in weeks. He tried to laugh it off. But the man just stared through him, eyes glazed with the same look soldiers get after they've seen something no one should. "She always comes after the 7th minute," he said. "She's older now. And angry. There's something else. Something worse. A week ago, Tyler's baby niece, just learning to speak, was playing with his smartwatch. She looked straight into the lens during a video call, tilted her head and whispered, 'Elora remembers you.' No one else in the room reacted. Not his sister. Not his mother. Only him. When he played the recording back, the audio was gone. Scrambled. But the timestamp read exactly 07:00, down to the millisecond. This isn't a war story. Not really. It's something else. Something older than our wars. Older than even the Krathans' fear of the dark. The question no one's asked until now isn't how Earth's weakest colony won. It's who, or what, was waiting for them, on Elora. And the worst part? The last line of the file said, "Elora was never one of ours." Tyler didn't sleep that night, not because he was afraid, but because something in his head refused to let him. It hummed beneath the surface like a distant power line, a low, droning frequency he couldn't shake. Every time he closed his eyes, it grew louder, like it was waiting for the silence. He tore apart his apartment looking for the source. Ripped open wall panels, unplugged every device, even shut down the building's main power grid at 3 a.m. Nothing helped. The noise wasn't around him. It was inside him. And when he finally stumbled into the bathroom, sweaty and shaking, he saw that his reflection was lagging, moving half a second slower than he was, like a delay in a live stream. A glitch. Then it smiled when he didn't. He didn't tell anyone. Who would he even tell? The next morning, the knock on his door came at 7 a.m. sharp. A woman stood there, pale, rain-slicked, and holding an envelope that looked older than both of them. No name, no return address, just a wax seal of EarthGov's Decommissioned Division 9. The agency officially dissolved 2 decades ago for psychological ethics violations. Tyler didn't speak. Neither did she. She handed him the envelope, like it was her confession, or maybe her surrender. Before he could ask anything, she said, "You don't remember me, do you?" Her voice was soft, familiar, like a song you only remember in dreams. "They said if I ever saw you again, I should ask if you still see the girl." Tyler froze. His heart thudded once, twice, then went completely still. The envelope contained a single Polaroid, faded, taken from inside Outpost Alora's med bay. In the background, barely in frame, was Tyler, younger, cleaner, wearing an EarthGov security badge with a date stamp from 5 years before the colony was even built. But it wasn't just that. He was smiling, holding a child, and the child had a name tag, Sarah Winslow. Tyler had no children, no memories of being stationed off-world, no history in any EarthGov registry past basic clearance level. He searched his own name in the personnel archive. Nothing came up. But when he searched the database for the Polaroid's code, the file that opened wasn't about him. It was a flagged case from Division 9, Project Recall Breach, subject, T. Winslow, reality disassociation level, 6.7. He blinked and the file was gone, deleted from the system, just like that. He found the woman again in the stairwell later that day, or maybe she found him. She introduced herself this time. Cassie. Delaney, former communications analyst for Outpost Elora, dishonorably discharged, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and declared mentally unfit after claiming she received calls from the dead through the colony's emergency broadcast channel. She showed him a scar behind her left ear. "They said it was a cochlear implant," she whispered, "but I never had hearing loss. I think it was a receiver. I think I wasn't supposed to hear myself." Tyler didn't know what to believe. Cassie spoke in circles, memories folding over themselves. Sometimes she swore she'd watched Elora burn. Other times she claimed it was never built at all, that the whole colony was a memory test created by EarthGov to study fear thresholds. "They needed to know," she said, "what happens when something ancient remembers you, something you thought you survived." But there were things Tyler couldn't ignore, like the voicemail on his phone that hadn't been there yesterday. Just heavy breathing, then the sound of a child humming a lullaby. The same lullaby his mother used to sing to him, but distorted, like it was playing underwater. The timestamp read, 07 Saudi hours, always the 7th minute. And then there were the gaps. Not in time, but in his own life. His journal entries changed when he reread them. Whole paragraphs vanished. One night he found a line in his own handwriting he didn't remember writing. "Don't let her in after minute 6. If you do, she becomes real." The scariest part wasn't that he might be losing his mind. It was the opposite. That all of it was real but meant to feel like madness, designed that way, built to collapse under scrutiny. And then last night Tyler played the Elora footage one last time, frame by frame. At 6 minutes 58 seconds the static sharpened. At 6:59 the screen distorted. At exactly 07 seconds, the child in the video, Sarah, turned and looked directly into the camera. She said, "We're almost home now, Daddy." And for just a second, Tyler saw his own face reflected in the display screen, seated behind her, whispering something into her ear, but no sound came through. Then the footage cut out, and this time, it didn't come back. Cassie hasn't answered her phone since. The voicemail greeting has changed. It's just static now, except if you listen. Carefully, if you really listen, you'll hear a voice underneath it. Not hers, yours. It felt like an ending at first. Tyler stood beneath the humming blue wash of the EarthGov archive chamber, surrounded by files that no longer existed. Cassie had vanished without a trace. No records, no digital footprint, not even residual comm data to suggest she ever contacted him. It should have terrified him. Instead, Tyler felt quiet, like he had reached the edge of something jagged, and on the other side was clarity. The discovery came from a maintenance file, something stupid, overlooked, a leftover cache buried under terabytes of rerouted system logs. But inside it was a directory labeled WinSAR07, and inside that, a single compressed video clip with a timestamp from exactly 7 years ago to the second. He opened it without hesitation, already bracing for what he thought he'd see. But it wasn't Alora. It was him, younger, paler, seated at a desk inside a medical debrief room. A counselor off-screen asked a series of questions. "Do you remember what happened after the power outage?" Tyler answered calmly, methodically, like it was a script he'd memorized. "I was tasked with monitoring stress response during the simulated siege. Subject showed signs of recursive delusion." The counselor nodded. "And the girl?" A long pause. Then Tyler looked directly at the camera and smiled faintly. There never was a girl. He watched the clip 5 times before the chill settled in. The room in the video wasn't some simulation, it was real. And what's worse, he remembered it. The dull ache in his arm where the injection went. The smell of sterilized rubber and burnt coffee. The flickering light that always buzzed just before it failed. He remembered being debriefed, being thanked, being told the experiment was over. And yet everything that came after, his life, his job, even Cassie, felt more real than this video. That's when the truth crystallized. Maybe Alora hadn't happened yet. Maybe it wasn't in the past. Maybe it was waiting to happen again. Tyler dove into his old files. He combed every piece of digital evidence, every log, every recorded minute. And then he found something even worse than the video. A redacted incident report filed under Black Sun Protocol. It detailed a civilian cognitive drift during a classified project on simulated planetary trauma. The subject, codenamed TW, began showing signs of memory bleed, referring to fabricated events before exposure even began. Project leads noted this as an emergent property of pattern 07 and terminated the program. The last note in the file, residual identity contamination likely. Advise permanent disconnection. Tyler sat frozen in his apartment, watching the sunset through a cracked window pane, and realized he didn't know what year it was. His devices all displayed the correct date. His ID still scanned. The world moved around him, but it felt like cardboard, staged, overly neat, like a reconstruction made by someone who had never lived here. The neighbors he'd known for 5 years no longer looked him in the eye. The kid down the hall stopped calling him Mr. Winslow. Instead, one night, as Tyler passed him in the lobby, the boy whispered, "You're still not supposed to, remember." And then it got worse. Late one night, the static came back, this time through the walls. Not from a device, not from anything electronic. It vibrated the building like it was alive. Tyler pressed his ear to the floor and heard a voice whispering backward, as if unwinding from time. He understood none of it, except the last phrase, "Pattern seeks the host." He bolted up, heart pounding, and saw his reflection again, not lagging, not delayed, but staring, blinking out of rhythm, and then it mouthed words he didn't say. "She's behind you." He turned, slow, hand trembling toward the light switch, and saw nothing, just his apartment. Still, familiar, ordinary. Except the door to his bedroom was open, and he never left it open. Inside, the walls were lined with Polaroids, dozens of them, all of Sarah, some smiling, some crying. One, just one, showed her staring at a blackened skyline, holding Tyler's hand. And behind them, towering in the chai smoke, something tall and thin and faceless watching them from the ruins. It had been in every picture, always on the edge, always slightly closer than the last. And in that moment, Tyler remembered the truth that broke him. He didn't find the Alora footage on a lost drive. He filmed it. He was the one who sent it. But if he remembered that now, what else had he forgotten? The Polaroids began to fall, one by one from the wall, landing softly, soundlessly, as if gravity had been turned down. He tried to catch them, but his hand passed through the last one, and in that breathless stillness, his screen flickered on. Cassie's face appeared, dead-eyed, pale, whispering something he could barely hear. You were the first breach. Then the file rewound. The first video, the original Elora transmission. But something had changed. The little girl in the frame, Sarah, wasn't alone anymore. There was someone else with her now, crouched beside her, stroking her hair. Oh, woman. Her face turned to the camera, blurry at first, then clear. It was Tyler's mother, smiling and whispering. It was never her memory, sweetheart. It was always yours. And the screen went black, but this time Tyler heard himself laugh, and it wasn't his voice. Tyler stopped counting the days after the clock started shifting, not in the usual way, not the blink of daylight savings or a glitchy sync across devices. This was quieter, subtler. The oven clock and the wall clock would drift apart by only a few seconds each day. His phone would flash 3:07 a.m. every night, no matter when he woke. Emails arrived with timestamps from the future, just a few minutes ahead, as if the senders were reaching across a membrane they didn't know existed. At first, he thought he was alone in this, maybe sleep-deprived, maybe unstable. But then he noticed patterns in places he hadn't looked before. Forum posts that disappeared seconds after publishing. A graffiti tag under a bridge that read, in a child's shaky handwriting, Sarah still dreams of fire. A comment under an old Elora conspiracy video. You were right all along. They used memory as the experiment, not the weapon. He clicked on the profile. It had no history, no uploads, no identity. But the comment stayed, like it was meant just for him. He began to collect them, screenshots, recordings, fragments of sentences dropped like breadcrumbs across the digital sprawl of forgotten websites and scrubbed feeds. In an archived live stream, from 20 years ago, a radio DJ laughed nervously before cutting to static. When Tyler scrubbed the audio through a reverse filter, he found a distorted voice saying, "They made him forget the first breach." In a background frame of a viral true crime documentary, a child's crayon drawing hung on the wall behind. The interviewee, an image of a faceless giant looming over a burning outpost. Elora, unmistakably. Tyler zoomed in on the drawing and saw something that shouldn't be there. The initials TW scribbled into the base of the tower, a name he didn't know he'd once written, or maybe hadn't yet. He wasn't the only one. Affected. The dreams made that clear. At first they were isolated, just fragments, unsettling scenes that collapsed when he woke. But over time, they became layered, synchronized, and far too specific to dismiss as coincidence. He dreamt of a subway station submerged in ash, always the same, broken benches, flickering emergency lights, and a sound like breathing made of static. People began showing up in his dreams, strangers at first, then faces he'd seen online, in those deleted comments, in backgrounds of news clips and decades-old broadcasts. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they only watched. But every time, without fail, they stared at him. Not as if he were present, but as if they were waiting for him to remember something. One woman always appeared in the same place, a narrow alley with no exit. Her eyes were milk white, her hands trembling as she carved symbols into the brick wall. Tyler memorized the shapes and drew them when he woke. He expected nonsense, gibberish. But when he uploaded the sketch to a language recognition AI, the response chilled him. Ancient Proto-Earth script. Translation uncertain. Possible match. You are the echo, not the origin. That was the moment Tyler stopped thinking of this as madness, because others knew. A man named Jonah Kramer reached out through a Tor-based messaging service 3 days later, said he'd worked on Division 9, claimed he was a sympathetic observer, placed inside the program during its collapse. The messages were broken, fragmented like they were typed during seizures. But one thing kept repeating. We were supposed to record what memory did under pressure, not what it let in. Something entered through the pattern breach. You were the anchor. Tyler asked why him. Kramer responded, because you were empty enough to survive it. Then nothing. No more messages. No more user profile. When Tyler tried to trace the IP, it looped back to a dead node inside an abandoned military server based in Anchorage. Its last login? 7 minutes before the Allura incident was first reported, on a date that, according to official history, no longer exists. The Federation calendar jumped that day, redesignated it, scrubbed it from civilian logs. No one noticed, because no one remembered. That's when the migraines started. Not headaches, not normal. These were waves of pressure that came with images he couldn't block, hands dragging across sand. Screams from behind mirrors. A countdown clock that always stopped at 07 now. He bled from the nose twice, blacked out during a call. And when he came to, his phone camera had recorded 15 seconds of footage, pointed at the ceiling, empty. But a voice in the background whispered, "Not much longer. She's learning how to wear you." He stopped going outside. He boarded. Up the windows? He started talking to the cameras, just in case, and that's when she reached out. Not Cassie, someone else. A third voice, an observer. A letter appeared in his mailbox, typed on brittle, yellowed paper. No postage, just a red stamp at the bottom, Project Gateway, Observer 3. It contained no instructions, only a single sentence. "You are not remembering incorrectly. You are remembering ahead." Tyler broke. Not in the way people collapse from pressure, but in the way things open. Like a lock turning in wet rust. He began writing on the walls, recording messages to a version of himself he couldn't prove existed. He found a thumb drive in his coat pocket that he didn't buy, with labeled folders marked Allura Stage 2 and Reclamation Ready. Inside were blueprints for a colony that had never been approved, a schematic for a neural pattern anchor, and a list of names, dozens of them, all labeled Returned. Cassie was one. So was Kramer, so was Sarah. She wasn't his daughter, she was never his, but she knew him. That was worse. In the final video file, one Tyler didn't remember filming, he speaks to the camera directly. His eyes are sunken, skin gray, hair matted with sweat. He looks aged, exhausted, barely holding on. And he says, "If you're seeing this, you made it past stage 1. That means the breaches are sinking. That means the others will find you. Don't trust the reflections. Don't answer the knock after 7. Don't follow the girl if she speaks your name before you tell it to her. You'll want to, but it's a trap. She's not real, not yet. But she's getting closer. The system won't collapse until you look away. So whatever you do, don't look away." The video ends. Tyler sits in the dark now, surrounded by pages, symbols, fragments of a life that no longer belongs to him. Outside, the streetlights flicker in patterns. Inside, the clocks have stopped at 07:01 and never started again. The static is constant now, a low moan threaded through every wire in the building. And the dreams, God, the dreams, have become memories, not his, but familiar. You're watching this because you've seen the signs. You've noticed the names repeating. You've seen the images that feel too real. You've felt it just behind the glass of your mind. Something pressing, patient, waiting. Though others are watching now. They've always been watching, and they've been waiting for you to remember too, because this isn't Tyler's story anymore. It never was. And the reflection in the screen, it's not smiling anymore. It's mouthing something. Welcome back. The file ends, but the static doesn't. Tyler hadn't slept in 5 days. Or maybe he had, and the waking hours were the dream, no longer distinguishable from the haze that threaded through everything now. The clocks had stopped ticking altogether. The building breathed when no one moved. Cameras blinked without power. Somewhere between his silence and the shadows, he realized it wasn't about Allura anymore. Not really. Not even about the colony. Those were scaffolds, projections, distractions. This had always been about memory, but not the kind stored in neurons or databases. This was deeper, older, a memory not of what happened, but what we are in. The flicker of static. Tyler found himself sitting on the floor of the apartment that no longer looked like his. Walls stripped down to metal frames, lightless, echoing. In his lap, a file he didn't remember opening, a faded paper record with his own handwriting but in someone else's voice. Inside, a transcript, an old confession. One he'd apparently Given before Elora fell, the interviewer's voice bled through the audio fragment like a dying frequency. Why did you agree to the program? Tyler's voice answered, weaker, honest. Because I didn't want to feel anything anymore. That was it. That was the fulcrum. Not heroism, not science, not exploration, escape. He signed up to forget, to shed the weight of a life he couldn't carry. The memories that gnawed at him, the child he failed, the woman he loved and left, the future he abandoned when he realized he could never be the person they needed him to be. Elora wasn't a mistake. It was a mirror, a place designed to reflect what the soul tried to bury. The colony was never weak. It was fragile because it was true, made of unfiltered memory, unhealed grief, unrelenting hope. And when they attacked, the invaders weren't fighting a military outpost. They were fighting raw, unprocessed humanity. And they lost. Because nothing fights harder than a person who's already broken and chooses to feel anyway. Tyler trembled. Tears came, not because of what he saw, but because of what he remembered feeling for the first time. Love, even if fleeting. Guilt, without filter. Hope, without guarantee. The pain of knowing something beautiful was ending, and choosing to hold it close anyway. A screen in the corner lit up. Cassie's face returned. But this time she wasn't whispering. She was crying. Not fear, not sadness, relief. She mouthed something, over and over. You came back. You chose to come back. And the room began to shift. Walls folding into light. Symbols burning from within the floorboards. The pattern he now understood was never a trap. It was a question, a test. Would you choose to remember the truth, knowing it will never stop hurting? Would you carry it because only those who remember pain are strong enough to love again? Then the voice, Observer 3, came through, this time not from a device, but from the air itself, like memory made audible. It was never about surviving. It was about returning. You left the world to escape yourself, and the world sent you back when it needed someone who remembered what it meant to feel. He looked down at his hands. They were fading, not into nothing, but into light, shifting into every version of himself he had ever been. The scientist, the coward, the lover, the father, the liar, the witness, the breach, and he understood. The truth wasn't meant to be remembered. It was meant to be lived. Again and again, in every version, in every timeline. Until we finally chose to feel it fully. Not to fix it, but to accept it. The screen blinked once more. A final line appeared in the old terminal interface, typing itself in pulses of static. Welcome to Stage 3. Remembrance is reclamation. Outside the window, a sun rose for the first time, but it wasn't Earth's sun, and the sky was filled with thousands of others, faces like his, eyes blinking open, waking up from dreams they never knew they were in. And somewhere in the dark, a child laughed. A sound so human, so hauntingly familiar, Tyler almost broke again, but he smiled and whispered, I remember you. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.